So I just put my little girl to bed. We were watching a movie together. And it was about a black mother who has two children. She lives in an urban environment and she's struggling to make ends meet and all that stuff. And something occurred to me. I suppose because in this week's episode of the Last Symptom podcast, I talk about race issues and Asians and that sort of thing. So I paused the movie and I said, let me ask you a question. Do you know what race is? And she said, yeah, I do know what that is. I said, okay, what is it? She said, well, then that's when you run faster than somebody else. And I said, yeah, well, that is one type of race. Are there any other types of race that you know about? She says, no. I said, well, let me ask you something. Do I look the same as you? Now, bear in mind that my daughter is half Honduran, and her appearance heavily favors her Honduran side of her racial makeup. I said, is there anything about me that you notice is different from like you and maybe your mother? No, she says, I don't know what you're talking about. I said, what about this movie we're watching? All right, we're watching this movie of this black urban family. Is there anything that you notice different about that family than you notice about me? Totally lost. She didn't have the first idea of what I was talking about. I'm not lying to you. She didn't have the first idea. My daughter's 6. She's been on the planet for 6 years. She lives a biracial life. And she truly and honestly could not tell the difference, or did not make any distinction between the black lady on the screen, her children, and me. And I said, you don't know, there's no differences that you notice between those people and your dad. And she said, she's a woman? You think I'm making this up. I'm not making this up. I reckon the reason why I thought to even have this discussion with her was because of this week's episode of the Last Symptom podcast, where we talked about race issues and we talked about Asians, and those things come up. I'm still marveling over the fact that just on her own, without anybody teaching her to make these distinctions, she doesn't make them on her own. I said, what do you see when you look out at everybody? You and me and this lady on the movie. I said, do you know what Asians are? She doesn't know what Asians are, so I have to describe to her. You hear like Chinese or Japanese language. When we go to the sushi place, the people that all work there, they're all Asian. Now, do you know what I'm talking about? I guess so, she says. What do you think about that? Do you not see that people are different? And she said to me, no. And I said, what do you see when you look out at the world? She says, I see people. That's a true story. My daughter, who's 6 years old, looks out at the world and only sees people. So I'm still trying to digest this, because this teaches me something, and I'm not totally sure what it teaches me yet. But from a totally innocent little girl's point of view, the only important distinction that her brain is making at 6, without having been taught to group people into different groups, the only distinction she makes is that, okay, that's a tree and those are people. She has seen black people all her life, and it has never occurred to her that black people, that their skin is darker, so they might be in a different category than as people. No, for her, it's people. Same thing with Asian people. She has seen Asian people. She has noticed their differences, but the only categorization, I guess, that has seemed to be important to her is that they're people. And I find that astonishing. What does that teach you about all the race discussions going on in the world right now? Are they natural? Are they natural? If left on our own, would we naturally group people this way and distinguish people, certain people from other people? Well, I have to spend some more time thinking about this, but the indication to me right now is that no, we would not. What else can I say about this? She says to me, what am I? What group do I fall into? I said, well, you're half white. You are half white, but your appearance isn't half white. You look like a Latina or Hispanic. And I said to her, do you know that some people, when they just look at me and they see, I had to explain to her, I said, when people see me, they say I'm white. And she said, well, your rope bracelet is white. You're not white. I said, I know, but that's what they say. They say I'm white. And I said, and the lady and her kids in the movie we're watching right now, they say that she's black. She said, well, she's not black. That doesn't make sense. I said, honey, that's what the world tells us. But I agree with you. And I said, do you notice that, like, for example, that the people in the movie, their features are different than mine? So it's not just skin color, it's also certain features. She says, no, I didn't notice that. So this is a really important thing, I think, to think about. That just left on our own, without any type of indoctrination or propaganda, just left on our own, people would naturally just look out and see people. The race issues, the concern about that, and even those distinctions being made in the mind are probably something that happens much later in life and not naturally at all. So, just thought I'd share that with you. Just put her to bed. She's almost as stubborn about going to sleep as I am. But it's Friday. You're seeing this on Friday. And I hope that everybody has a wonderful weekend. I've got a new light here. I don't know if you can tell. It's I put off buying one of these things for forever because I just thought it wasn't natural enough. But finally, to save myself trouble and time, I went ahead and picked myself up one of these lights and played around with it so they wouldn't blind me when I turned it on. And I hope that it makes the orange slice videos look better and more appealing to you folks. If you haven't heard this week's episode of the Last Symptom podcast, please do.